Hello, it's Larry Clark with Excelsior Music Publishing, and today we're going to be talking about our ensemble series that's called Adaptable Series, and it's got adaptable duets, adaptable trios, and more to come. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I have the authors of those books here. I've got Tyler Arcari and Matthew Putnam, and string editor who's assist with the string books, Diana Traietta. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I'm just going to throw the question out to these folks about the series, and they can do that and talk a little bit about it. So maybe, Tyler, you can start with, sort of the genesis of how we got started with a series like this.
Yeah, so as you know, there are other series like this in the industry that have been around for a while. And, just like with any other piece of music, at a certain point, things get to a point where you want a little bit of something new. So we decided to kind of tackle this in our special way and kind of build upon that really nice capstone that's already been put in place for the series is in the industry. And so when we started working on this, we started thinking about things we could do, not only to just have another book that was completely flexible with instruments, but to, in the future, either expand it with instruments that weren't available or not as widely available, or instruments that would kind of amplify it in a different way. And so the first step was just setting out to try and make sure that the music was something new and fresh, which is why me and Matt wrote original pieces of music in there, as well as some standards that are important to kind of teach style and more time era type pieces. And so that was the first step. And then after that, it kind of just snowballed into what it is now. And I guess we'll talk about that later. But
so Matt, in terms of your part in this, you obviously are a middle school band director and obviously a composer arranger. So how does this fit a need in a classroom like yours or a middle school orchestra for that matter?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was our solo and ensemble competition here in North Carolina. It's always been kind of a struggle. We don't have a set list here in North Carolina like some states do. So finding appropriate literature and, of course, finding literature that matches different hodgepodge of instruments put together that you wouldn't normally have. It's easy to find a trumpet duet or a clarinet duet, but when you want to mix a tuba and a flute, maybe that's hard to find. And you have kids that want to do that, and kids want to spend some time playing their instruments and playing chamber music together. I like to have a resource to do that. So I was excited when Tyler came to me with the possibility of doing this. So that's how I got involved.
Well, springboard off that, when I was a teacher, I used to have a kid that would show up that played tuba, and they would bring their friend who played clarinet, and they said, "Do you have anything for me?" And rarely I'd have anything. I have to go find it. So these are neat fill.
Students coming in at lunchtime into the music room, they just, instead of them sitting around doing nothing or messing up the equipment, it's a great opportunity for them to play with each other. And I always like to say on duets and trios, well, small ensembles in general, especially a duet, somebody's getting a lesson and somebody's given a lesson. And sometimes it's not even the student who's the worst player, because the worst player might know how to play rhythm better than the better player, so they can help each other. So Diana, tell us a little bit about what your role in this whole adaptable series and what's part of the process that you go through.
Sure. So I was so honored to be brought in on this project and to work with Tyler and Matt. So what was basically given to me is we released the band books first, in essence. And then we decided we also wanted to do the same thing for strings. So I took the band books, and I basically arranged them in such a way that it would make sense for a string player to be able to play. So I had to look really carefully at key signatures, first of all, because obviously there's some key signatures for a band that doesn't work with strings and vice versa. So I made an educated a goal that I wanted to keep with our familiar keys for string players like D and G and C, but also expand on some of the key signatures that aren't emphasized as much in public school. So we explored a little bit with those key signatures and putting these pieces in those keys. But what I also did was in my studio right here, I have the ability that I actually when I brought home all the music to do the editing, I sat at my music stand and with each instrument and played through them. So not only did I make sure that the key worked, but I made sure that the voicing worked, the ranges worked, and that I was very careful to be able to put in fingering as I went with each instrument to make sure that it worked for a student.
Well,
Owie?
Well, one of the things I really enjoyed that you did on an educational level as a former teacher was that you not only rearranged it so it was applicable for strings, but you also made sure that there was a progression so that there are points when we go out of first position. And you did that intentionally, which is awesome because we want that as teachers to be able to kind of push our students. So I thought that was very well thought out when you did that in the book.
Thank you, because that's the next thing I was going to mention is that I took this basically to an entirely different level than what's currently on the market. And I basically went through and I said, you know, the beginning of the book should be easier. So the students have an opportunity to learn the ensemble part of playing and the chamber skills that go into performing these duets or trios. But as the books progressed, I actually worked on giving alternative fingerings, staying in third position, for instance, making sure that students can start applying the skills that they're learning for shifting and position work to these duet books, but that they can also play them in first position, because I think for any good educator, you know, the whole part of string playing is hearing and being able to sing it in the pitches. So being able to play it in first position first and hearing how it's supposed to sound, and then working through those third position fingerings, and it just reinforces the music. So, you know, I took it, I hope I adapted it very well to take it above and beyond and really make it a true resource for these music educators.
So for those folks that don't know, that are out there listening and watching, talk about, can the band books work with the string books? String books work with the band books? Tyler, you want to handle that one?
So to kind of piggyback off of what Diana was saying, because there are keys that are not as common for younger students in the string world versus the wind world, we kind of took the conscious effort not to do that, because inevitably one is going to be far more difficult, but it's not going to be nearly as sophisticated as the challenge. So, you know, something with a couple quarter notes and a couple eighth notes being far harder than it needs to be simply because of the key didn't seem like it was as beneficial to a teacher and a student musician as it could have been. So that was a conscious effort to keep them separate, but they do work flexibly within their own kind of medium.
So how did you guys choose what types of pieces that you put in the book?
I would say that process took more time than actually writing the music. I'll say that to begin with.
Sure. Was that because you didn't want to try to overlap on what each other was doing, or were you trying to just make it a variety of, I mean, you know?
I made a spreadsheet that I would send to Matt.
That's a good place to start.
I made a spreadsheet, and mine were like almost like a dart. I would scour old music and see what if I wasn't going to write an original, I would just look for stuff that was applicable range and was you know, had a nice melody and something that I thought that students would be able to get some kind of fundamental practice from. But I made a spreadsheet so that me and Matt didn't fall over each other.
Yeah, so you were trying to coordinate so you didn't write the same literature.
Oh yeah, well that, and we wanted to make sure that we wrote, like for instance, different levels. You know, I would send Matt a thing. I just wrote a couple harder, you know, grade 2.5s in here. We're probably going to need a couple of these from you. We also coordinated with length of the piece, because we want to have pieces in there that are good enough to play at festival, and you know, so they have to be a certain length. So a lot of back and forth.
And tried to cover historically as many different eras as we could within the confines of what we're doing. Everything from Renaissance music up to early 20th century stuff, original stuff, all different styles. Just trying to really hit a kaleidoscope there.
Well, and I recall discussing with Tyler for sure that it was probably important that we don't repeat material that's in other books of this type that are out there, so that this is fresh, new, and different. So if people are out there listening saying, well, I already have the other books that are available or they're flexible instrumentation from other companies, well, they're not the same. And there's a bunch of different repertoire. So it's just adding to your repertoire instead of the same pieces.
It's hard to tell sometimes when Beethoven had 16 German dances.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So what do you see as far as the progression of, now you have duets and trio? Well, actually, let's back up first. Maybe talk about what's different about, this series than the ones that are out there. What do you have that the other series like this, that I was participating in doing, years ago? What's different?
I'll take the first half, and I'm going to let Diana take the second half because she's
Great.
the one who's put on that gem.
Okay.
The first thing is we tried to hit as many of the instruments as possible. So a lot of times when you have methods or books that have instruments tied to them, for instance, like a tenor saxophone gets lumped in kind of with the clarinets and the trumpets, and they have to read out of that book, and it's not always as appropriate for range. And so you either have to make concessions for one of the instruments, or you have to put in, a little bit more cumbersome note options. So if it's out of the range for the tenor sax, you add a secondary note. So what we did was we created an oboe book, a dedicated tenor sax book, and French horn book. So these instruments, they're a little bit more interesting in range compared with the other instruments, gets their own book that is tailored to them.
So in essence, now there's a book for every band instrument.
Yes.
Which is unique compared to other series of this type.
Yeah. Something that works. And then Diana stumbled upon an opportunity that turned into be a great, cool, innovative thing for this series. We'll let her take it.
Yeah, so once we launched the brass and the woodwind, the band part of the Adaptable series, and it got out on the market, one of our retail music stores that purchases music from us up in Canada, the buyer came to me and said, I'm showing these to all my teachers and they love the series, but it's missing percussion. And I turned to Tyler and Larry and I said, guys, we're forgetting an integral part of our band here. So within a couple of weeks, I think it was quicker than that, the guys basically got right on top of putting together an adaptable duet and trio percussion book. And once that hit the scene and all the music stores and teachers started realizing that they can mix and match their flute with percussion, or even the strings with percussion, the floodgates opened.
Yeah, and one of the things we wanted to make sure we did when we worked on the percussion book was not just have the duets presented in percussion form. So they've kind of morphed into something a little bit cooler. So there are 2 lines for duets, for instance, that have the mallet lines that run through the duets. But on top of that, our percussion writer, Robbie Clayson, has used a 3rd line to incorporate all kinds of auxiliary instruments and battery instruments, so that not only can you use that percussion book, like Diana was saying, as a duet between a flute and percussion, but it functions as almost a Swiss Army knife for percussionists as well as an ensemble. You could have the mallet players playing the melody in the lead line. You could have a flute and a trumpet and a oboe playing the other parts, and you could put the battery and the auxiliary instruments to use as well and create a full ensemble. So what used to be a little bit scary for middle school kids to get split up into small groups and play in chamber literature has now become easier. You put them all in one group, you play the duet together, and then you can split them up in all kinds of groups and give them the confidence they need to play in chamber literature to start. Because it's hard to start students playing in isolated situations, you know.
So Matt, now that we have this percussion book and all these other instruments, do you think there's what other performance opportunities could there be, like even out of the school setting? You know, where could the students use this material?
Well, I think certainly during the situation that we're going through right now with everybody sheltering in place, it's using the internet. You can do duets long distance. You can do trios long distance with editing software. Facilitates that a lot easier to be able to do that. And like a duet book isn't necessarily a duet book anymore. Like with the percussion, you've got expanded possibilities, and certainly with the trio book as well. So a chance to use that virtual concerts, through that system.
So Matt, could you see yourself teaching lessons to students using something like a duet book? For instance, you could send them you playing the lead line as a recording and let them practice. And
absolutely. One thing we haven't mentioned about this is that with the series, the duet book, part one isn't necessarily always the lead line.
Right.
Yeah.
That we spent a lot of time breaking things up so that both parts were equally involved in melodic content, so nobody got the boring part, so to speak. Everybody's got melodic interest throughout, and it changes places, so it makes them aware of their responsibility musically, what's going on, and how to listen for that and balance to that.
Yep.
Excellent. So Diana, you look like you had some performance ideas that you wanted to share.
Well, yeah, I know we're all in a really difficult situation because we're introducing ourselves and our students to this online learning platform. But when we are ready to go back into school, I know a lot of educators really love using this book, especially for sub-planning. It's very easy to get a classroom set, especially if you're going to have a sub, and to be able to pass that out and have the students work on these in small groups. Also lunch, after school, study hall type of places. But also we're learning from home, and there are a lot of households out there that have more than their kids have more than one instrument that they play. So if you have students in the same household that play two different instruments, these books can be really great for them to work together for as well too.
I was thinking also that there might be opportunities in the community. Oftentimes the orchestra, the band gets asked to do something in the community, and it's impossible to get the whole group together. But sending out, a trio plus a percussionist to a nursing home or to the opening of something or whatever, to do community outreach in order to, get a small group out there and let the students lead little performances. Adding that percussion just kind of opens up everything and changes everything in that regard. And it's not just, 3 flute players or 3 clarinet players. You can have whatever could show up to the to the performance, and make that happen, and do a nice concert or whatever for the old people in the nursing homes, and they love to hear anything.
Yeah.
So maybe talk to us a little bit about Tyler, about the future. What else do you have in mind? What's on the drawing board, as it were, and what are we getting ready to get going with more of?
Well, one of the cool things about the name of the series, Adaptable Duets, is that the title in and of itself kind of lends us to be able to do all kinds of stuff with it. So we've got a lot of cool things that are possibilities. We've thrown around a adaptable jazz duets, which is kind of neat. We've got a great new jazz editor and a lot of great new jazz writers that are coming out soon with the company to use. So that's awesome. We've also got possibilities for what you were talking about with going and playing with community outreach. There are all kinds of avenues for holidays and celebration type events that we can work on. We definitely want to do a quartet book. A little bit more daunting, right, Matt, to do that one.
Quartet's the hardest one.
Yeah, so
I can tell you from experience.
We want to do that. We, of course, we've got 2 duet. We've got 2 duet books now with the string and the winds, and the trios with the string and the winds. I would imagine the next step is going to be something a little bit more targeted. And then after that, we'll expand to quartets and stuff like that. So maybe, I mean, I know Diana even threw around Halloween duets, which would be fun, you know. So I see lots of possibilities. I think now that we have this idea of full and complete flexibility, we'll try our best to see if we can expand that to past percussion. Maybe there's something else we're missing.
Well, and that's the other thing is we are always open to ideas. If you have an idea on what else you'd like to see in a series like this, send us an email, info@excelsiormusic.com. We love to hear feedback, you know, and we want to know how you use the books. Maybe even send us a link to a video of you using the books, and that's something we can use in our social media as well. So Diana, tell since you're on the sales side of things and marketing as well, tell the people watching where they can get these books.
That is a fantastic question. I'm so glad you asked. The most important thing we can do right now is support our local businesses. And as a publisher, we're a supplier to your local music store. So whether you choose to purchase online or you choose to go to your neighborhood music store, you can find our stuff there on their shelves. If for any reason you can't, please let them know that they can order through us. It is incredibly important, especially with the current circumstances, that we support our local music store and small businesses. So if anybody's interested in trying out these duet or trio books, I highly encourage you to check out your local music store wherever you are and make a call to them. I'm sure they'll be really excited to hear from you.
And there's a link on our website that says participating dealers, and you can go right there. And Diana, how many do we have? It's 200.
Oh my goodness, if you look at all the chains, I mean, we have close to 300 music stores between the United States, Canada, and we even have a few international dealers, especially in Australia, that supply and stock these specific books. So check out our website under dealers and you'll be able to find all the local stores.
Anything else anyone like to add that's going to encourage people to use this great series?
I've enjoyed working on it. I have fun on it. I hope everyone who uses it also has fun and can get something educational out of it as well.
Great. Well, thank you all. Appreciate your time today. And again, the name of the book is Adaptable Ensemble Series, which has adaptable duets and trios for both winds and strings that work in any combination of wind instruments or any combination of strings in those books. So thank you, Tyler and Diana and Matt, and we hope you all have a great day.
Thanks.